Chapter 21 of She and Allan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. She and Allan by H. Rider Haggard. Chapter 21. The Lesson. Yes, answered Ayesha, laughing very softly. For that purpose alone, O truth-seeking Allan, whose curiosity is so fierce that the wild world cannot hold it, did you come to Kôr, and not to seek wealth or new lands, or to fight more savages. No, not even to look upon a certain Ayesha, of whom the old wizard told you, though I think you have always loved to try to lift the veil that hides women's hearts, if not their faces. Yet it was I who brought you to Kôr for my own purposes, not your desire, nor Zikali's map and talisman, since had not the white lady who lies sick been stolen by Rezu, never would you have pursued the journey, nor found the way hither." "How could you have anything to do with that business?" I asked testily, for my nerves were on edge and I said the first thing that came into my mind. "That, Allan, is a question over which you will wonder for a long while, either beneath or beyond the sun, as you will wonder concerning much that has to do with me, which your little mind, shut in its iron box of ignorance and pride, cannot understand today. For example, you have been wondering, I am sure, how the lightning killed those 11 men whose bodies you went to look on an hour or two ago and left the rest untouched. Well, I will tell you at once that it was not lightning that killed them, although the strength within me was manifest to you in storm, but rather what that witch doctor of your following called wizardry, because they were traitors who betrayed your army to Rezu. I killed them with my wrath and by the wand of my power. Oh, you do not believe, yet perhaps ere long you will, since thus to fulfill your prayer I must also kill you, almost. That is the trouble, Allan. To kill you outright would be easy, but to kill you just enough to set your spirit free and yet leave one crevice of mortal life through which it can creep back again, that is most difficult, a thing that only I can do, and even of myself I am not sure." "Pray do not try the experiment," I began, thoroughly alarmed, but she cut me short. "Disturb me no more, Allan, with the tremors and changes of your uncertain mind, lest you should work more evil than you think, and making mine uncertain also, spoil my skill. Nay, do not try to fly, for already the net has thrown itself about you and you cannot stir, who are bound like a little gilded wasp in the spider's web, or like birds beneath the eyes of basilisks." This was true, for I found that strive as I would, I could not move a limb or even an eyelid. I was frozen to that spot and there was nothing for it except to curse my folly and say my prayers. All this while she went on talking, but of what she said I have not the faintest idea, because my remaining wits were absorbed in these much needed implorations. Presently of a sudden I appeared to see Ayesha seated in a temple, for there were columns about her and behind her was an altar on which fire burnt. All round her too were hooded snakes like to that which she wore about her middle, fashioned in gold. To these snakes she sang and they danced to her singing. Yes, with flickering tongues they danced upon their tails. What the scene signified I cannot conceive, unless it meant that this mistress of magic was consulting her familiars. Then that vision vanished and Ayesha's voice began to seem very far away and dreamy. Also her wondrous beauty became visible to me through her veil. as though I had acquired a new sense that overcame the limitations of mortal sight. Even in this extremity I reflected it was well that the last thing I looked on should be something so glorious. No, not quite the last thing, for out of the corners of my eyes I saw that Umslopogaas from a sitting position had sunk on to his back and lay, apparently dead, with his axe still gripped tightly and held above his head, as though his arm had been turned to ice. After this terrible things began to happen to me and I became aware that I was dying. A great wind seemed to catch me up and blow me to and fro as a leaf is blown in the eddies of a winter gale. Enormous rushes of darkness flowed over me, to be succeeded by vivid bursts of brightness that dazzled like lightning. I fell off precipices and at the foot of them was caught by some fearful strength and tossed to the very skies. From those skies I was hurled down again into a kind of whirlpool of inky night round which I spun perpetually, as it seemed for hours and hours. But worst of all was the awful loneliness from which I suffered. It seemed to me as though there were no other living thing in all the universe and never had been and never would be any other living thing. I felt as though I were the universe, rushing solitary through space for ages upon ages in a frantic search for fellowship and finding none. Then something seemed to grip my throat and I knew that I had died, for the world floated away from beneath me. Now fear and every mortal sensation left me, to be replaced by a new and spiritual terror. I, or rather my disembodied consciousness, seemed to come up for judgment. And the horror of it was that I appeared to be my own judge. There, a very embodiment of cold justice, my spirit, grown luminous, sat upon a throne and to it, with dread and merciless particularity, I set out all my misdeeds. It was as if some part of me remained mortal, for I could see my two eyes, my mouth and my hands, but nothing else. And strange enough they looked. From the eyes came tears, from the mouth flowed words, and the hands were joined as though in prayer to that throned and adamantine spirit which was me. It was as though this spirit were asking how my body had served its purposes and advanced its mighty ends, and in reply, oh, what a miserable tale I had to tell. Fault upon fault, weakness upon weakness, sin upon sin. Never before did I understand how black was my record. I tried to relieve the picture with some incidents of attempted good, but that spirit would not hearken. It seemed to say that it had gathered up the good and knew it all. It was of the evil that it would learn, not of the good that had bettered it, but of the evil by which it had been harmed. Hearing this there rose up in my consciousness some memory of what Ayesha had said, namely that the body lived within the temple of the spirit which is oft defied, and not the spirit in the body. The story was told and I hearkened for the judgment, my own judgment on myself, which I knew would be accepted without question and registered for good or ill. But none came, since ere the balance sank this way or that, ere it could be uttered, I was swept afar. Through infinity I was swept, and as I fled faster than the light, the meaning of what I had seen came home to me. I knew, or seemed to know, for the first time that at the last man must answer to himself, or perhaps to a divine principle within himself, that out of his own free will, through long aeons and by a million steps, he climbs or sinks to the heights or depths dormant in his nature. That from what he was springs what he is, and what he is engenders what he shall be for ever and aye. Now I envisaged immortality, and splendid and awful was its face. it clasped me to its breast